What have the Romans ever done for us? A Jewish revolutionary once asked. Well, I'd say they inspired some awesome miniatures. Well, hello everyone, my name is Alex, and today I'm going to introduce to you my new unit of Republican Romans. I'm going to discuss the pros and cons of the two big Republican Roman plastic kits in 28mm. That'd be Agema and Victrix. And then I'll discuss the new unit, how I designed it, and some concluding thoughts. So let's jump into it. So I'm working my way into the Republican Roman army. As you can see here, I've got my Triarii and a couple of Velites. And the Republican Romans. So these are not Imperial Romans. These are Republican Romans. You know, when the Rome was young and feisty, and they went and they conquered the world, they still had time to work their farms and vote in person. It was really quite remarkable what they managed to accomplish. You know, they weren't an empire then. They weren't being run by a single strong man. This is all done as a republic, and the republic was balanced enough to survive hundreds of years. And how did that happen? Well, one reason I think they were so successful is because of their alliance system. And as you can see here, these are one of such allies. These are the Pedites Extraordinarii. According to Polybius, this is the best fifth of the Republican Roman Consular Army, their standard army. So they are selected as the best men, apparently. We really don't know very much about them at all, just a few lines from Polybius about them. But, you know, that's frustrating, of course. But I'm imagining them here as a mixed unit from a variety of Italian allied states. You can tell that by the shield design, a little bit of variety in the helmets and such. But, you know, they look very, very similar to Romans, of course. That would be citizen Romans. So you'll see here that their armor is varying from full mail, like this guy here in the back, to some pectoral plates, you know, bronze plates, various types of bronze plates. The guy in the center has a pure bronze cuirass, a full cuirass. And a few of these guys just have tunics as well. Like some of these guys here, Chuck and the javelins, aren't really armored at all, especially in the back. So a mix of armors, and yeah, that was, of course, driven by the kit. So I'm going to talk to you about the two big kits. So this is a very unique unit for me because the figures are primarily Agema figures as opposed to Victrix figures, such as the unit here on the left. I almost always do Victrix figures. Except for, you know, these are all Agema except for this guy here and the signifer in back. So like the two officers in the unit, everyone else is Agema. So what do I think about the kits? Well, the Great Southern Ancient Miniature Man YouTube channel, he's done a breakdown of the two kits in the past. So I recommend you check that out. He went through it in more detail. He does a lot of miniature reviews, so that's in his wheelhouse. But he's a very positive guy, so I'm going to focus on the negative here. I'm going to approach this question from a very practical standpoint. You know, so I'm building these miniatures for multi-basing about 30 figures at a time. Right, so let's talk about the Victrix kits first. So these are older Victrix kits. So here's an example. This is Rome's Legions of the Republic. They're armed in mail. And you can see at the bottom here how old the kit is. So this is their ancient range, and the 7 means this is the 7th in their line. They're in the like 50 now, I think. So very, very old compared to the rest of the range. And here's another example. This is the 9th one. This is the Allied Legions, but they're pretty interchangeable. You could, you know, use citizen soldiers for either one if you want. And I did that here on the left. So I used a mix of those two kits for a lot of these guys here on the left, the Triarii I'm showing. But this isn't, those kits, they're in the older Victrix style. And I touched upon this in my last video. The Victrix Roman kits have very static standing poses. They aren't leading with their left shoulder, but you know, they rank up just fine. And I swapped out the right arms here with the new Hoplite kit to give them, I think, a little bit of a better posture for ranking up. You know, the reason I did that is at this time in the Victrix range, those spears and those javelins are just giant looking things. You know, like oars They're much larger than the Agema ones, for instance. And indeed, they're much larger than the Victrix spears from the later kits. So now, these are downsides of the kits, but the miniatures still paint up really, really well. And I like their shields as well. So, you can do some work and mix it with the older kits with the newer kits in Victrix very easily and supplement it that way. And I think that's a great benefit to Victrix generally, and that they just have a huge range. You can mix parts in really easily, even from the Dark Age kit if you really want to, which I've done in the past. So let's talk about the Agema kit then. So I used two kits, the two main Agema plastic kits. One is the Hannibal's Veterans, which I've talked about previously, and this one I used as well. It's a little close, sorry. The Republican Roman Legionnaires. Comes in a box rather than a bag for Victrix. And so, compared to the Victrix Romans, this kit comes with miniatures and very dynamic poses. And let's see. So here I can show you what the sample sprue here looks like. So there's 5 figures on the main sprue. One is missing, of course. Sorry, this isn't a formal review. I don't really do those on this channel. But you can see right away the amount of stuff that they've clustered here in a single, pretty compact sprue, which I think communicates the pros and cons of this kit. So let's break that down. So you'll see here you can easily create some javelin and some sword-wielding soldiers with a variety of poses. They look particularly active. So there's a guy here who's chucking a javelin. There he is, right? Chucking a javelin. This guy's got a good lean towards him. This guy's kneeling, which is quite unique. And this fellow here is standing pretty passively. The guy on the left is armed in full mail, and he's standing with a slight lean to him, kind of like this guy here in the back. Let me zoom in, you can kind of see what that posture looks like. Oops, sorry, there we go. So, good dynamism, if you will. But you'll note that there's all this diversity in armor and poses and equipment, and it can stretch the kit a bit thin because they're trying to do a lot here. So, if you're trying to do this at scale, let's consider this guy here chucking the javelin. So he's completely unarmored, right? And only a mail-clad man can be kneeling. So you'll note that the poses always come with a particular armor set, and it's very distinct. And that distinction will communicate itself to the unit. You'll notice, of course, here in the unit, for whatever reason, all the guys who happen to be kneeling are armed in mail. And these 3 guys here on the right, they're all armed in tunics without heavy armor on. But I tried to mix and match what I could to give the unit some diversity. But there's that. So you'll notice these things if you try building it at scale. I don't like the way the heads attach to the bodies for Agema. I think Victrix has a crisper system. I was never quite sure how much plastic to take off, and I had to put a fair amount of the plastic cement in order to get these to adhere to the bodies. There's not like a real easy slot for them to stick in. Minor quibble. Another downside to the Agema kit is the arms and the sleeve pieces. So I don't particularly like them. I think it's annoying to have to attach a free javelin, such as the one here, to the throwing hands. So they don't come built in to a throwing position. You have to literally glue the javelin to the throwing hand. I definitely prefer Victrix system or other systems that are very crisp, where you just have a single piece for the hand and the javelin, or the hand and the sword, stuff like that. So the figures still, they paint up just fine, and they mix relatively well with the Victrix figures if you're doing them solely within each kit. I don't think the kit bashing works too well between them. Although, the Agema sword arms, such as the ones here. They work fine with Victrix. I've done that in the past. So the swords are quite large and thick. Also the shields. So all the shields on this unit are Victrix shields, and I prefer the look of the Victrix shields. I think they look nicer than the Agema shields, and of course I put the little big man transfers on them as well. These shields here are quite large, and I just didn't quite like the look of them. Another minor thing. So all in all, I found the Agema figures a little bit more difficult to deal with. I had to attach a scabbard manually to every soldier, for example. Each arm also had to be attached, but it's very customizable and just a little bit labor intensive, so they don't paint up quite as well as the Victrix ones, and I do prefer the Victrix style and sculpting, but with some effort, I still think they look quite good. So, okay, so let's talk about then the second way in which this unit is unique to me, and that is the coordinated activity of the unit. So you'll notice that the second row is casting their javelins here on the right. Oops, oh, blooper. So the right half of the unit here is casting their javelins, and the front line is on their knees, as the unit commander is controlling them from the front. So this dynamic unit formation is different from anything I've built before, and I think it brings some nice novelty to the unit. I did use a lot of dynamic poses with my Iberian units, the two of them, and those of course were driven by those great Victrix Iberian figures, but it wasn't quite as ordered or orderly as you'd see here, as synchronized as you see here. So I think I'd like to try this again with the more professional soldiers that I deal. Okay, so yeah, first row is only armed in swords. They've already cast their javelins. Second row is the middle of casting their javelins on the right and preparing to cast them on the left. The third row waits patiently, like those figures in the back. So again, I'm capturing the unit as if it were right before the point of contact with the enemy. It's just what I do typically, as if the lines are just about to crash together, like it's a Hollywood flick. So let's talk about the method. Painting first. So all tunics here are in a nice shade of dark blue, as if the unit was formed and given some standardized equipment to make them stand out. They are, of course, supposed to be elite, or at least considered elite, performing dangerous roles. So these guys, I try to depict them as if they were Romanized a little bit, yet still retaining some of their original individual place of origins character, if you will. So you'll note the diversity in shield design and armor, and of course comes naturally to the kit. The helmets are also a mix of the Roman Montefortino style, with there's some Italo-Corinthian helmets in there as well. I think those helmets look really cool, like say this one here, or this guy here, yeah. I like those two guys that are flanking the officer in the front. They've got a really cool style shield. It almost looks Etruscan to me. And also, you'll note that most of them have 3 feathers on top, but it's not exclusive in the unit. What I think I'll do is that I'll build my citizen Roman units almost entirely with three feathers on top of their helmets to distinguish them from other Hellenized soldiers or Carthaginian soldiers. I also used a dull bronze on their helmets as opposed to the bright gold here for the Triarii. And that's because these guys here on the right are filling a more risky and active role than the Triarii on the left, and they're not quite as rich, I'm imagining, either. So in terms of how I painted them, well, I did a simple base color plus wash technique with some minor highlighting here and there. I paid very close attention to the feathers to make sure they gave off that nice contrast and look. Yeah, and I applied some nice highlights to the feathers and also some washes here and there to give them that look. Now I think the basing helps bring the unit together quite well. So I moved away from the basing paint to a pre-mixed sand material from Geek Gaming Scenics. And I wanted to thank a previous commenter for recommending that to me. So it's worked out real well for me. They've got a great set of available pre-mixed basing materials, such as the one that I used here. I had no big difficulties with the basing this time, unlike with the Triari. I again tried the method of sequentially laying down a row of soldiers, putting the basing material in the hard to reach spots, and then putting down the next row, putting the basing material down, and finishing off with the third row, just so that's easier to rank them up closely without getting the basing material everywhere. And even if you do get it a little bit on your guys' shields or on their feet, it washes off really easily, much easier than the paint, the basing paint. So one application of the basing material was almost enough. I think I'd say I did like 1.5 applications of the basing material. And then I lightly stained it with a brown, just a real simple craft brown paint. Watered it down and stained it a little bit to give a little bit of depth to the base. And so yeah, that leaves us with the main colors of the unit. You'll notice the complex mid-brownish green and stone of the base, contrast with the mostly white shields, and then the bright coloring of the feathers, and the dark blue of the tunics, and the bronze of the men in metal. And each of those is, I think, very visually distinct and adds to the character of the unit. Gives it that nice aesthetic. All right. And of course, I use Simon Miller's Big Red Bat Shops bases. 4 of them here are affixed together. They are, I think they're the 4 King and Parliament, size 14C. This is 14B. So 14C is just a little bit bigger. Just glued 4 of them together. Put down my guys. There are 27, right? Yeah, 27 guys here. So that's how many I fit on. It's a pretty typical number for me for this size base. All right, well that's all I've got for today. Thank you for watching. And I've got some nice velités in back I've been working on as well. So I hope to have a couple more videos coming up soon on different topics. You'll know when you see them. And I've been experimenting a little bit with gaming, and I've enjoyed that so far. I'll talk about that in a following video. And hope you're all doing well. Have a good one.